Salutations viewers, my name is GameDame and welcome to my favorite Halo games. Now in this video, I'm going to explain my favorite Halo games, which does not include Halo 2600, Halo Online, Halo Spartan Assault, Halo Spartan Strike, Halo Wars, and Halo Wars 2. I have not played them or kind of don't care about those like side games. I mean, I do like Halo Wars and Halo Wars 2, but I want to focus on like the core Halo games for right now. So this listed format will start off with my least favorite to my absolute favorite. But please keep in mind that this is just my opinion and everyone is entitled to their own opinion. Without further ado, here is my list. At number 7, I have Halo 4. Halo 4 was released in 2012 and developed by 343 Industries. Halo 4 is last on my list due to the lack of story clarity and the multiplayer. However, Halo 4 and 5 could easily be swapped, but for the main reason Halo 4 is at the bottom is due to the confusing storyline and the multiplayer not being all that different and special. To elaborate on this, the campaign, it jumped all over the place. And while it did bring in cool new enemies and guns, I was just so lost in some places that I had to do more research afterwards to understand it better, and I usually never have to do that with the other Halo games. As they were, direct, and the campaign made sense along the way, and one of my least favorite parts of the campaign was the underwhelming fights, especially with the antagonist, the Didact. My biggest issue was mainly due to the marketing, as there was a huge buildup, and I was brought to a devastation when playing the game, as it did not excite me as I thought it would, being the newest Halo game by 343 Studios. Because Halo was near and dear to my heart growing up, and I was like, okay, let's see what's going to happen here. While I note that 343 Industries is mainly consistent with Bungie employees, it did not feel like a Bungie-like game, of course, because it's a new company, but the styles and approaches to the story were just not there. While the game was beautiful and had an amazing soundtrack, it did not live up to my standard for what a Halo game should have been, which is why Halo 4 is in my number 7 spot. At number 6, we have Halo 5 Guardians. Halo 5 Guardians was released in 2015 and developed by 343 Industries. With Spartan Jameson Locke as the main character, Master Chief, of course, was still included. The graphics and the gameplay were amazing, but the story was a bit lacking as Spartan Jameson Locke was only focused on one thing, getting to Master Chief, which you barely played in the game compared to Locke. At least it felt like I played Locke a lot more than I played Master Chief. But it just didn't feel that good to me. I just wish they included Master Chief a little bit more into the campaign rather than focusing on Spartan Jameson Locke. So the campaign was disappointing since it was a bit dull and boring and anticlimactic, but the story was more eventful and made more sense and was easier to follow than Halo 4's story. So Halo 5 Guardians multiplayer was also pretty well done, especially in the newer company's hands. I would have to state I am a bit biased when it comes to the developers, as you have already seen, as Bungie were the ones that created my favorite FPS of all time, and now 343 Industries, while they capitalize on the graphics and clean gameplay, they lack creativity in the story. It was very hard to pick which would be in the 6 and 7 spot, since both campaigns were not great, but the multiplayer was much better in 5 than it was 4, which is why it is in my number 6 spot. At number 5, we have Halo 3 ODST. So now, Halo 3 ODST was released in 2009 and developed by Bungie. At first, I was a little taken back because you weren't exactly playing as a Spartan, but Halo 3 ODST was a whole new experience in itself, as you did not, of course, play as the main characters, as I just stated, but as your regular Joe Schmo, the ODSTs, also known as Orbital Drop Shock Trooper. This game gave a new challenge because you couldn't take as much damage as you could while playing Master Chief. And I have to add, this was much lower on my list to begin with, but after a while, I played it a second time, I had to change my opinion of it because at first I was just so disappointed with you not being able to play as Master Chief, but it gave me a whole new perspective later on. So at first I didn't like it. The second time around I played it, I loved it. Like I said, I was so used to playing as a Spartan that I forgot how regular soldiers that were part of the fight, and having that whole new fresh perspective of the game gave me more in-depth knowledge of the game's lore. This game was extremely hard on its own, with even normal enemies being almost like boss-like in status. Gameplay was fantastic, AIs were not half bad, and the campaign story overall was hard as it sort of plays like a murder mystery. If you guys kind of catch my drift, it's like you're trying to find the ODSTs and you were looking at the stories and everything and rolling back to trying to find all the ODSTs. That's probably why it's a little bit lower on my list, because it was incredibly time consuming to find all like my buddies that did drop. And I wish it was a bit more linear, but it's not as huge of a deal, because that was trying to give you more of a feel for the area and how like an ODST operates. Overall, the game was solid and again gave me a new outlook in the Halo universe, but it did not make me as excited to play, as I again didn't finish it the first time, or I did finish it. I played it the first time, didn't like it, and then played it again the second time when I got older, and then I loved it. And this is why Halo 3 ODST is in my number 5 spot. In my number 4 spot, it is Halo 2. Halo 2 was released in 2004, developed by Bungie. I didn't play Halo 2 when it initially came out, as Halo 3 was the first ever Halo game I ever played, but when I did get to around playing it, the Anniversary Edition already came out for it, and I gave it a shot. Halo 2's campaign was nothing short of brilliance, with Master Chief having to deal with small-scale Covenant invasion, but the biggest aspect of this game is this was the first game to introduce playtime as the Arbiter, which gave another whole new perspective on the Covenant and peered into their way of life. The campaign expanded on Combat Evolved by adding in more and new enemies, and introducing a color scheme that would indicate their rank, making it easier to know who the head honcho was. While the multiplayer was not too much to snuff about, it's not terrible. It took Combat Evolved's classic arena-based player PvP modes, which was popular in the original game, but overall I would say Halo 2 is a solid game out of all the Halo games, but it did not stand over Halo 3, Reach, and Combat Evolved for me, which is why Halo 2 is in my number 4 spot. At number 3, we have Halo Combat Evolved. Halo Combat Evolved was released in 2001, developed by Bungie. I was not there when Halo Combat Evolved was released originally, as I was only 7 years old and thought dirt was part of the food group. Halo Combat Evolved is what started the beloved franchise off and introduced John S117, aka Master Chief, to the world of gaming. This game did eventually get remade, but it was an unforgettable story, as it was the first story to be introduced. Halo Combat Evolved attained the perfect level of difficulty that provides with plenty of challenges, but still making it manageable to beat and still enjoy the game and the story, just in general, enjoying the game as a whole. I know in some instances when I get incredibly stuck in a game, it does kill the story for me, but a bit if I can't get past a certain level. And that really all depends what difficulty you're playing on too. I played them all through like normal at first, and I'm going through them again, and I'm playing them all on Legendary. While this game is intense and it is a masterpiece on its own, it did not age well as one would hope. While it is still fun to pick up in the Master Chief Collection, it still doesn't compare to the gameplay of today, but I am putting the time it was released and the development in as a factor, since it was released in 2001, basically 20 years ago, or just about 20 years. I would have to say the AI in this video game in particular is the funniest out of all the AIs I've come across, and this is a huge reason why I love this game, especially when introduced to Sergeant Johnson. You know who our favorite sergeant is. Overall, this game was fantastic, but it couldn't beat Reach or Halo 3, which is why Halo Combat Evolved is in my number 3 spot. Now, what's in my number 2? My number 2 spot is Halo 3. Halo 3 was released in 2007 and developed by Bungie. Halo 3 was the first Halo game I have ever played, it being part of the Fable 2 Halo 3 bundle for the Xbox 360. I remember coming home and playing multiplayer with all my friends, not touching my homework until we messed around with maps we created in Forge. Forge is one of the main reasons why this is my number 2 on my list, since many hours were spent into creating them and having tons of laughs and late nights. Not only were you able to build your own maps, you were also able to readily be able to download other maps other people have created, which did save a lot of time if you wanted to get something in quickly. While it is the big reason as to why it is number 2, it is not the main reason. It was the campaign. With its hard-hitting soundtrack spanning to large open environments and being able to play as the Arbiter, that was one of the biggest features it had, but another portion was you were able to record your gameplay with full camera controls, which was also used in Forge. The multiplayer was something to examine on its own, with the new aim assist and exemplary gameplay, which gave the ultimate Halo experience. And for those reasons and more, This is why Halo 3 is on my number 2 spot. And at number 1, we have Halo Reach. Now, I know there's a lot of controversy, but it was one of my favorite games because it didn't end in a good way. It ended in a bad way. I'm not one for happy endings. Usually, most of the Halo games do end in a somewhat happier ending, but Halo Reach was released in 2010, developed by Bungie. Halo Reach was fantastic because of the campaign and because the story didn't end, like I just explained, in a happy ending. It ended and explains the fall of Reach and gave us a closer look as to each Spartan that was part of the team. Each Spartan's death was unexpected and made me incredibly sad since each character, besides June because he was the only survivor, had such an impact on the team in very different ways. I would have to say that Emil and Carter had the most noble deaths due to their sacrifice for the greater good and going out with style and heroism. Halo Reach also introduced abilities which were given throughout the campaign, being a nice and new touch to the gaming franchise, introducing Sprint, Active Camouflage, Jetpack, Armor Lock, and Evade. Those introduced many more options that are now included in the newer games Halo 4 and after, and they not have only changed the campaign but also the multiplayer. The multiplayer was also very exceptional and probably my favorite multiplayer to this day when it comes to the Halo games. With their memorable maps and their new abilities made it a lot new playstyles come into play and being able to customize your own character in multiplayer. Halo Reach is my favorite for all of these reasons and a lot more, as it is very polished and it was the last saving grace for Bungie. Now, I do know that there's going to be a lot of controversy with what I just said, but it is, again, my take on this. So let me know what your thoughts are and what your favorite Halo games in a particular order. You can also include the Halo games that I didn't even say in the beginning, like in my opening paragraph. I know we have all different takes, but it is really awesome to hear back from you guys and get reasons why you love the certain games that you do. Thank you guys so much for watching. Please do not forget to subscribe and or follow not only to my YouTube but to my Twitch. You know where my YouTube is at, but you can find my Twitch at twitch.tv/thegamedame. Thanks guys, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye-bye.